with
Hell
the
yeah,
intro.
brother. Beauty is pain. Beauty is pain.
Beauty is
Beauty,
paid.
beauty
Got a
is
little
pain.
Rick Astley going on there. We're gonna get
Yeah.
Rick rolled, AJ
Yeah.
rolled today.
Yeah, you're gonna get the goat from Philadelphia. I don't know about I don't know what Rick Astley's gonna do. We're gonna be Rick Ass Kicker.
There you go. Hey, I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm from Lebanon, right outside of Philly.
Look at you. Look
Yeah,
at you. I know Lebanon well.
nice.
Get some freaking Amish bologna from there. A little Lebanon fucking bologna. Come on. You got the
Well,
sweet, you got the dry, and you got the sweet. I was always partial to the dry.
holy hell, Pennsylvania,
Homie.
Lebanon. So,
Well,
uh,
and look, great to be here, right? This is the GOAT of conservative public relations, the one and only Irish Catholic from Northeast Philadelphia. You are listening to Awakened Nation with my brother from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, Brad Zolitz. So let's
boom.
go kick some ass.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zolitz, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things to Awakened Nation.
That's professional grade, baby.
Yeah, well, believe me, I created some of the biggest shows
You did.
in conservative media, so
I
better
am.
I better freaking know what I'm doing.
You better. It's tremendous. I love what you're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to have our guest on today simply because there is not enough conservative voices out there right now. Please welcome to Awakened Nation, Mr. AJ Rice.
Brad, great to be here, brother. Really, pleasure. Long time coming.
I know. I have to call you the GOAT. Everybody calls you the GOAT, greatest of all time, simply because you say what's on your mind, man. And you have the clout to do that. I mean, I got to just touch on some of your bio here. AJ Rice is the editor-in-chief of the Publius National Post on Substack and the author of the books The White Privilege Album, which I love, bringing racial harmony to very fine people on both sides, and The Walking Dead, How Society's Vogue virus destroys our culture. Right here, you can see that. Both of these books had me laughing my butt off, and we'll dig into why that is. He serves as the CEO of Publius PR, a premier communication firm located in Washington, D.C. AJ Rice is America's publicist and the undisputed GOAT of conservative public relations, columnist, humorist, and impresario. I love that. Welcome to the show, AJ.
Well, thank you, sir. Big shout out to all those very fine people out there. I know they are in this audience, and I know some of the very fine people I know go by another name, and that is Maryland Dad. I just want to give a shout out to all the Maryland dads out there, right? Especially the ones that are illegal alien gangbangers with MS-13 tattooed on their knuckles, right? So let's see how many more useful idiots can fly to Latin America to bring home Joseph Stalin Jr., all those Maryland dads in El Salvador. Big shout out to all the Maryland dads.
I have to agree with you. And let's start with this. I used to live in Long Island. I moved out of Long Island because the MS-13 gang murdered 4 people on Long Island, and they filmed it on Facebook or out on wherever the platform they were using while they were murdering 2 teenage girls at a park 1 mile from my house. And a year or 2 later, they denied that those people even existed. Let's start there. It seems like the left loves to create chaos, and they deny that they've created chaos.
Sure. But what's weird is they're kind of showing us, based on their concerns, and who am I to quibble with listening to them? I'll believe them if they're going to tell me things. If they're going to lift their skirts up, right? And you find a couple different genders underneath the skirt. The reality is that if they're going to do that, you should believe them. And they're showing us who their constituency is. Who are they most concerned about? Well, Brad, turns out they're most concerned with turning around airplanes filled with MS-13 murderers and rapists so that they can go to, a Maryland cul-de-sac. Now, I'm a Virginia dad, Philly dad, I'm not a Maryland dad, but there's plenty of communities out there. You lived in one of them where, I mean, look, the Democrats are doing everything in their power to bring the worst possible people who should never have been here to a neighborhood near you. So that's who they are. Breathlessly. Oh, the man. Like we accidentally deported, Benjamin Franklin or something. I mean, it's just ridiculous, right?
It is.
So, but this is who they are, Brad. They are the party of MS-13, the party of Nicaragua, the party of the kid on the streets of New York that shoots the healthcare executive, the party of Snow White and the 7 anti-Semites, right? The party of Queers for Palestine, the party of the Tesla burners, the party of the Summer of Love. This is who they are, right? And who's their spokesman? My girlfriend, right? Jasmine, my girlfriend, right? Jasmine Crockett. She's my Valentine. She's my girlfriend. And she's pissed, obviously, because Trump's tariffs are disrupting the flow of those Chinese-made poisonous eyelashes that she's always wearing, right? She can't get her poisonous eyelashes. So she's pissed. And when it's not her, it's the bartender, right? AOC.
This cracks me up. And if you haven't noticed, ladies and gentlemen, AJ has a great sense of humor about all of this because it is ridiculous. This is the most anti-patriotic, anti-American things I've ever seen in my life. And AJ, this is what has depressed me, believe it or not. I have friends from high school and college. We sat in the same civics classes. We sat in the same history classes. We sat side by side, and they somehow got the liberal woke virus in them. And you can't have a logical conversation. What happened? How can people be sitting side by side and reconfigure what patriotism is inside their own head?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're captured. They're captured. And look, generations have been captured before. The ball sort of moves on. But, I mean, they just got their clock cleaned in this last election.
Yeah.
So there's going to be less of them. They're going to be louder, but smaller, more angry. And if you look at the last 100 days, some of the examples I just gave you, there's others, sending men and women still into women's, or sending men into Nancy Mace's bathroom on Capitol Hill, men and women's sports. They're still fighting for these things. So, as much as Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith and John Fetterman want them to learn their lesson and not look as insane, they're not. They're not learning.
Right.
Right? They're fighting for this stuff. They're fighting for all that USAID money. So this is who they are. The party of the genital mutilators. The party of the IRS. The party of the IRS.
Yeah.
So, and look, I'm a little bit upset that I'm never going to get to see that, that trans musical, Tranny the musical in Ireland that they were going to put on, or whatever the hell it was. I'm Irish. I go to Ireland. I don't really go there for that. I'm not sure the Irish even go there for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is who they are, and we should believe them. And if they keep it up, they're saying everything we need them to not take back any house of Congress in the midterm election.
I can just see that musical. Because a trans woman is a woman.
That's right.
And then everybody applauds.
That's right. The sequel to Riverdance. That's right.
Yeah. You have a sub chapter within your book where you talk about why isn't the NAACP having a travel alert? They have a travel alert for anybody going to Florida, but why don't they have one for Chicago? And this just came across my desk this morning. This is from China Air. When you fly into London, they have this in a pamphlet for anybody flying from China, and it is safety. London is generally a safe place to travel. However, precautions are needed when entering areas mainly populated by Indians, Pakistanis, and Black people. We advise tourists not to go out alone at night, and females always to be accompanied by another person when traveling. Can you believe that?
Yeah, well, it's the well, that's the thing is that, I mean, if we put those things out, people would go crazy. I mean, it's not necessarily inaccurate what they're saying. I think we should put that everywhere, quite frankly. Chicago is mostly dangerous, unless you're Juicy Smollett and you're making up the fact that you were jumped, right? If you're juicy, if you're a little juicy there, right, and you're in the South Chicago, and you say two dudes in MAGA hats said, "Welcome to MAGA country," right? And then they went off to the White Sox game. I mean, the reality is that Chicago's not safe for its own residents. So the hubris, because they don't like DeSantis, the fatso governor and the goofy mayor, the new mayor. And by the way, our client, Rod Blagojevich, he's a friend of ours and he's a client. We're helping him with his book. One of the reasons Trump gave him a full pardon recently was so that Rod could stay a Democrat and run for mayor of Chicago against this lunatic that is allowing Chicago to be sucked into the 12th level of hell. Just like the last one, the Beetlejuice, the little Beetlejuice woman that was in there, the lesbian Beetlejuice, whatever the hell her name was. I forget her name. But here's the thing.
I think it was
Lightfoot. Light brain, whatever the hell. Anyway, Buzz Lightyear's little Beetlejuice sister. So the reality is that they're complaining about DeSantis, obviously, because he cracked down on DEI and wokeism and the trans mafia. He took them to the woodshed. Obviously, also his stance on COVID, right? And I think it would be news. I think this would be news to all the African Americans that play for the Miami Heat, play for the Miami Dolphins, and play for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and play for the Orlando Magic and the Tampa Bay Rays, and so on and so forth. They take contracts in Florida because there's no state income tax on their NBA salary, right? It would be news to them to find out that the NAACP is worried. I got a phone call to Pat Riley over there at the Heat that all the black people in Florida are in danger. Need a travel advisory, right? Because of wokeism. So you know who needs it? You know who needs a travel advisory? The fact that the Second Amendment rights of the people of Illinois have been stymied. The fact that the cops have been defunded. The fact that the whole third world has been redistributed to their front yard.
Yeah.
That's who needs a travel advisory. But you don't see that. You're not going to see a travel advisory to Detroit or Baltimore.
It's true. I mean, if you point out to people how well we all have it in America, this is not a racist country, and yet these race brokers keep running around and saying it's white supremacy. That's the worst thing possible, next to climate change. Racism is everywhere. It's in the system, and blah blah blah. And you look at this country, and I know we're two white guys, so people are going to look at us like, well, what do you know?
No, that game's over. That's like a chicken hawk argument. I can't talk about the Civil War because I didn't fight in it. I'm from Northeast Philadelphia. I grew up in the playground. I thought I was Allen Iverson for 20 years of my life. I will challenge you and play. How many? I'll play Black Jeopardy against whatever one of these dorky MSNBC goofball contributors want to play this game.
Yeah.
This is part of the problem, is that white right-wingers, probably because they're part of the bow tie crowd and they were prepped since kindergarten and they went all the freaking fancy schools. I didn't go to any of that stuff. I went to public school. I went to Catholic school. I grew up with Jews and Italians and Polish and blacks on the playground, on the sports field, in the concert hall. I can name every single member of the Wu-Tang Clan, so you can take that and smoke it. The reality is that we need to get in their faces. And look, this is why Trump, from Queens, who grew up, he had some money, but he grew up on construction sites. He's an I-beam guy. He's a hard hat guy. He grew up with Puerto Ricans and blacks and Jews and Italians, and they're all working together to build stuff around New York City and Atlantic City and other places. This is why, in a way, he has always been more relatable to certain minority groups than Kamala Harris. The first this and the first that and the first samosa maker and the first green curry maker and whatever the hell she's the Jamaican jerk chicken,
Right.
spread, whatever it is. So, I mean, that's just it. That's just it. And look, Bill Maher said it recently. The American people they care about authenticity.
Yeah.
They care about it. They care about merit and, whether or not you're keeping it real. And the problem with Kamala and, pinky finger Tim Waltz, the man that was purchased from the white wine aisle at Total Wine, the problem with them two is that there was nothing, there was no merit or authenticity really at all there,
Right.
right? With either of them.
I think what is happening, and we all know this, we had Democrats at one point, JFK Democrats, and they were based in logic and compassion for people and all these things. Today, JFK, John F. Kennedy, could not be in the Democrat Party simply because they have gone so radically left. Even Bill Maher now appears to be centric. And
Right.
you see it all the time, and I still don't understand why more people aren't leaving the Democrat Party simply because the things now are, sorry, bat crap crazy at this point. A man can be a woman. There's racism everywhere. We need to take care of people overseas first. We just saw, ladies and gentlemen, how they took care of people in Hawaii and in North Carolina after major, natural disasters. They're sending money overseas instead of helping Americans. Oh, and by the way, you have to qualify for that $750. You don't just get it because you live there.
Right.
You have to qualify for it. And it's only one per household. And so $750, meanwhile, we're seeing trillions in waste, billions in waste going all over the planet to everybody else but America. And that's what it feels like. We have Muslim-only cities now in Texas and Minnesota and Michigan. We have Chinese CCP members purchasing farmland here in the United States. And our politicians through the years have sold off all the Great Lakes and our main waterways. It feels like they're serving the world instead of the United States of America. And I don't understand why people can't see this. They're still standing solidly in Democrat values or whatever they call it.
I think more can see them than you think because, I mean, let's be honest. Joe Rogan and Tulsi Gabbard endorsed Bernie Sanders for president, and now they've moved towards Trump. Elon Musk was a Democrat. He moved towards Trump. You have public intellectuals, everyone from Naomi Wolf to, Camille Paglia. These are like first, second wave feminists that have moved away. J.K. Rowling, they've moved away from the Democrat Party. And I mean, you mention Kennedy. I mean, let's be honest. The oldest male heir of the Kennedy family is a cabinet secretary in Trump's administration. So they're the ones that are bleeding people. I saw they're at 23% approval, Democrat Party, 11% approval with independents. And one of the reasons they went so hard at Tulsi and RFK Jr. during the confirmation hearings is so that people like John Fetherman and Seth Moulton and anyone else that thinks of escaping the Democrat Party plantation sees that there is a price to be paid for trying to escape the plantation.
Yeah.
And they talk about we need to find our own Joe Rogan. Well, you had him. And look, you're basically an anti-male party, right? That's why you're bleeding people like Barstool Sports and some of these other podcasters. And so, I mean, you're losing stand-up comics. You're losing big time. So you're just this sort of, what are you? The party of angry white women, Karens, and I mean, it's insane. Because the reality is, here's the reality. All this talk last summer by the Democrats about joy, we're going to bring joy, right? Kamala and Mr. Pinky Finger in the air, Tim Waltz, okay, Tampon Timmy, right? Elmer Fudd, he's out there with putting tampons instead of shotgun shells into the 12 gauge. So, that they were going to bring joy to us, but as well as I do, Brad, that if you've ever hung out with any of these left-wing cultural Marxists or DEI people or ESG people or the hall monitors of life, right? We see videos every day on TikTok of some old man with a MAGA hat on, and some nasty, stink puss, disgusting woman comes up to him, screaming in their face. It's disgusting,
Yeah.
right? I love it because this is who they are. Then they go to the Tesla, then they go to protest Tesla later. So,
Yeah.
Look, if there's anything the left does not bring, it's joy. They bring trickle down wokeism is trickle down misery.
Yeah.
Because what do they want? They want all of us alone, unmarried, miserable, joyless, sitting in our apartments and our houses, no fun, listening to Taylor Swift, hanging out with our cats that we got from Springfield, Ohio, right? We got our cats from Springfield. We rescued them from the Haitian menu.
Yeah.
And just screaming about what? Screaming about white privilege, screaming about toxic masculinity, screaming about the patriarchy, screaming about intersectionality. That's what they want.
Yeah.
That's what they want. Because that's a controllable group of people because they then provide the answer.
Yeah. Well, the media, I forget who said this, but they got a news anchor woman got furious that, news was now shifting down to Twitter and to podcasts like mine. And she's like, we're the ones who are supposed to tell you what to believe in. And I truly believe right now that maybe 10% of the population is still Democrat. 23%, last I saw, 23% of Democrats still believe the news, or people still believe the news. And right now, here are the false narratives that are coming out. The left is now trying to say that people regret their vote for Trump. Trump is in decline mentally. He has Alzheimer's. The tariff wars are just crazy. Prices are still high everywhere. No, they're not. And why are people so against Musk finding and eliminating fraud? I mean, Ross Perot tried to warn us years ago, and now Musk actually is showing the sheets. We also saw the payoffs coming out of the Ukraine to all these different politicians. How could anybody be against these things? And why do they still believe the media? I just don't get it.
Right. Well, I mean, there's always going to be a contingent that's going to hang around till it's, long over, like that Japanese soldier that emerged in like 1968 that still thought the war was going on, right?
Yeah.
There's a few of them, that, and they're always going to be with us. And in some ways, I think we need them. We need them. We need examples to point to, for sure. Now, there are some Democrats out there that are trying to be a little clever. Gavin Newsom is bringing Charlie Kirk and Bannon on his podcast, right? He's also doing something that I pointed out to his ex-wife last week when I was on her show, which was Kimberly Guilfoyle, and that was that one of the other things he's doing is he's bringing on his potential rivals for 2028, and he's getting them to say stupid stuff live on the air on his show so that he has tape on them saying really dumb things like Waltz did when he was there. So, and I'm sure he'll put Whitmer on and he'll put, Shapiro on and, this goofball governor of Maryland that thinks he's Barack Obama Jr. I'm sure he'll put them all on slowly. That's fine. Gavin's, believe me, he's more clever than he looks. But I will tell you, they're in deep trouble. They're in deep trouble because if you go around this country in this last election, it wasn't just, the very fine people that showed up to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
He brought racial harmony. He had the Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan voting the same way as Jewish voters in the suburbs of Pennsylvania, suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yeah. Pay attention to that, folks, what he just said. Pay attention to that.
He had African Americans, especially males, moving towards him from Atlanta to Detroit to Pittsburgh, Clark County, Nevada, Maricopa County, Arizona. And then, of course, he won the Catholic vote big. And for all this talk about, this blue wall that came down, and it did come down. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, that came down. But there was a second blue wall that also came down, and the second blue wall runs from El Paso to Corpus Christi, Brownsville, right? And that is along the Texas-Mexico border. These are Latin, Catholic, Democrat counties, and they all flip. They all flip. And if you look at Nevada, he's the first Republican to win Nevada since George W. Bush in 2004. Now, a lot of it are Hispanic voters. Hispanic voters. So when you see the plane loads of tattooed faces with the plane loads of Maryland dads, right?
Yeah.
The plane loads of Maryland dads who are, rapists yesterday, now they're Maryland dads today. These aren't lettuce pickers. I know the left tries to pretend, these are all grape pickers in Napa and citrus pickers in Orlando and this and that. No, that is not who these are. And guess what, dummies? The Hispanic voters that just voted for Trump know that. But your goofy white pumpkin spice drinking, Audi driving, Peloton riding asses, you goofballs in the suburbs of D.C. and Westchester County, New York, and Marin County, California, you apparently don't know that. You apparently have not figured that out. So for all this talk about Kamala being this and that and the first, blah, 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 Trump got all these different groups and created a coalition that is more multi-ethnic and more working class than any Republican probably since Reagan and Eisenhower.
Yeah. I lived in New York City for 35 years, and that is a Democrat liberal stronghold there in New York. And that doesn't mean that the people there aren't, conservative and try to vote conservative. But what it is this is why they'll never flip. And that is they take such good care of the elderly voting bloc in New York City, which is huge. And it's all, Italian, Jewish, Polish, you name it, and Black, Latino especially. They're never going to sway the vote simply because the handouts and the services, the social services they give to people in New York City, especially, they're just never going to go to the conservative side because they will be punished for doing so, because they will take away all those social services. Now I live in Las Vegas, and the big thing in Las Vegas is most of Nevada is conservative. The problem is the major counties like Clark County and up in Reno, I don't know what that county is up there, but they vote Democrat. So this is a huge win for Trump, and it's simply because I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. Trump is the common working guy. He has money, but I've seen him when I lived in New York City. No cameras on him, nothing. I've seen him get out of the limousine on Fifth Avenue or wherever, and he sees construction workers. He's heading into the building, and he stops mid-stride, looks over, and walks straight over to shake hands, and he's there for 20 minutes.
Yep.
And crowds start to gather, and then he goes back inside. This is, I hate to say it, he connects with the rest of us. And that, believe it or not, those of you listening who are on the left, between New York and California is the rest of the United States that has to make a living every day.
That's
so
right.
Sorry to get long-winded.
Look, he grew up, on construction sites. He's an I-beam guy. He's a hard hat guy. Casinos in Atlantic City. He helped Mayor Koch. He helped a million different types of mayors, all different parties. It didn't matter. He responded after 9/11. He wants LaGuardia and JFK airports to be beautiful, even though they're not.
Yeah.
And he's been complaining about the bridges and the tunnels and the airports around New York City since he was on Larry King in 1981. This is not new. Not new. It's like I go to Hong Kong, I go to these places, and everything's new and beautiful.
Yeah.
I will tell you this. I'm here in D.C., and he's been here president only not even 100 days yet. And he told this goofball mayor here, hey, you better clean this stuff up. You better get these tent cities and this garbage out of here. We had these tent cities on the 14th Street Bridge over by the State Department. We had Black Lives Matter Plaza painted up in front of Lafayette Park Square, in front of the St. Regis, in front of the Hay Adams. That's all gone. He basically told her, listen, I'll make myself mayor and take over the home rule of DC at any minute. I'll make JD Vance the mayor. Screw you. Get these illegal aliens out of here. Get these drug users off the streets. America's about to celebrate its 250th birthday. Clean this freaking dump up now. Do it now. And she freaking moved faster than I knew she could freaking move. I mean, it's almost as fast as trying to give all our African-American citizens 15 booster shots, which she moved real fast on that too.
Yeah.
We're going to go to this black neighborhood. We got to poison this black neighborhood. We got to go poison this black neighborhood. Oh, we'll go down to Nats Park. Oh, we'll go to the Wizards play, the Chinatown. Here's 50 boosters. Dr. Fauci's hanging out. I mean, believe me, she moved fast as lightning. And because he was going to look, he was leveraging her, and he still is. He makes statements. Look, he has to take a limo ride. I mean, sometimes when he goes to Arlington Cemetery, if he's moving around Pentagon, sometimes he'll take Marine One. But he sees what it looks like, and it looks like hell. And he complains. He goes, "Look, the president of France flies in, and they've got to drive through trash heaps, and human refuse to get to the White House or Capitol Hill. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment."
Well, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, if you've never driven to Washington, D.C., it's hard. It was horrific. I mean, I remember being stuck in traffic, and what they've done to black people in Washington, D.C. is horrific. Begging on the streets, people barely wearing clothes. It looked like a war-torn village, in Haiti. I mean, it was horrible. And I was shocked by this. And this is something that media cameras never turn around and show you. Horrible living conditions for these people. And, I love that Trump just turns around and says, hey, clean it up. Get it together. That's what he says.
Right.
I feel, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit. I believe that all the biggest things that Democrats promised to do, they never did because they had slush funds for it. The wall is a good example. We're going to build a wall. Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, they all said, we're going to build a wall. We're going to build that wall, and this is what they did, but it never got built. So that money went somewhere. That money was allocated. Then Trump comes along. He's pragmatic. He's a businessman. He goes, okay, we're going to build a wall. And he builds the wall. And I feel that the only reason they're attacking him is because their money is being taken away from them, their ability to become multimillionaires. And the other thing is that they never want a Republican to solve these problems because it makes them look horrible. Let's talk about that.
Sure. I mean, look, two things here, because you mentioned you're in Nevada. What you talk about. I mean, Trump has been slowly picking off some of their issues. This is why you didn't see, the UAW and the Teamsters make full-throated AFL-CIO full-throated endorsements of Kamala. The other thing too is the no tax on tips, and I want to get your opinion on this. I mean, you have the SEIU there where you're at in Henderson and Las Vegas. I mean, that's the gaming. I mean, when he said no tax on tips, did he get a large chunk of those? Because I've been told he did. He stole that entire service industry, Employees International Union people at all the casinos and the resorts. And he knows it because he runs casinos and resorts. So he wants these people to make money.
Yeah.
And he stole them from the Democrat.
Yeah. 100% because, ladies and gentlemen, you may not know this, but in Las Vegas, there are 2 things I notice. The pulse of our economy is felt immediately in Vegas because that's where extra money goes. You know, if you have a little extra money, you're taking your family to Vegas. The second thing is, I believe we are the only city or maybe state in the union that has unions for hospitality workers, such as bartenders, maids who clean your room, people who take care of, the picking up spills and everything. And here in Vegas, a bartender can make $100,000 a year, including tips. So imagine being taxed to death on that extra cash. Most waitresses, you may not know this, they only make, they give them a base salary of like $2.13 an hour. I don't know what it is here, but that's the way it was. And they were expected to make it up in tips. Well, we all know people fudge the numbers on their tax return because they have to. It's basically we're living in an inflationary country. We have a fiat currency, so every year if you don't get a raise, you're scrambling to make ends meet. And so I think what made this incredible, I mean, if we get historians that are not on the left who start to write about what Trump did, his campaign, the stadiums. I mean, he'd go to 2 different states in one day. He'd fly in. I think he did like 100 rallies or something. I mean, this has to be historical, and no one's talking about it. No one's getting into it. But he went and met the working class people where they work. And I think that's the most important thing in any election is to get in the train and go across the country.
Look, and I just want to say, I mean, there is an element of our enemies that know this. And I'm not just going to blame academia, Hollywood, the media, Democrat Party, but this is why you've seen such resistance. And in some cases, especially up until recently, it was coming from the Republican Party too. I mean, the John Boehners and the Paul Ryans and the Mitch McConnells, they didn't want to see, Trump's Republican Party firmly implanted for decades to come. They like the Mitt Romney, magical underwear, John McCain Republican Party, right?
Right.
Where you got heroes that were captured and heroes that weren't captured. That's the Republican Party they like. The party of losers, the party that takes your medicine, don't complain about the election, go home, have your little tapioca pudding, put on your diaper and go to bed, Beavis. That's what they want.
Yeah.
Okay? They want compliance. And Trump hasn't been compliant since the OG came down the golden escalator. He has not been compliant. And now the purge is complete. Because even the RNC was still a little bit of a problem, even in this last, in the run-up to this last election. He had to get rid of this Ronna Romney, sleeper cell woman. He had to get rid of her. And he put the guy from North Carolina and his daughter-in-law in there, and they executed. So here's the thing. I want to talk about this. And it's always amazing when I shoot this list out. You start from the Civil War. And you go Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt, JFK, Reagan, and Trump. Everyone I just named was shot at or shot. Most of them were killed. All of them were Republicans except JFK, the lone Irish Catholic.
Right.
Most of them died. And Reagan and Trump didn't. Teddy Roosevelt didn't. But I'm sorry. You can take this data and do what you want with it. But for all the talk about the arc of progress bending towards justice, let's be honest. People are shooting Republican presidents.
Yeah.
It's just in fact, it's just, I'm sorry. The other thing is, in most cases of the people I just named, these were all disruptors of some kind.
Yeah.
They were all disruptors. So Trump comes down the golden escalator. He's a disruptor. And what did they do? We had 2 phony impeachments, 4 phony indictments, 2 assassins on the field. They've raided his wife's underwear drawer. They've drugged his children into court. They try to bankrupt people and this and that, go after the business, go after everything that they possibly can. Now they're going after Barron, who's 19. So
Yeah.
they're hunting this man.
Yeah.
And the reason they're doing it is what you just said. It's not just the rallies and he's up there and he's dunking on people. It's the fact that he is reshaping not just our political world, but our cultural one too. And now he's reshaping some of our economic realities. Gotta take your medicine. For too long, we've been sort of force-fed globalism. That's what this tariff stuff's about.
Yeah.
You know? So, because here's why. You know, when I came to Washington 21 years ago, there were plenty of people that are running around here, even in the George W. Bush administration. They're all calling themselves, and even George W. Bush called himself this, Reagan Republican. Because you had Governor Reagan run against Ford in 76, loses the primary, buyer's remorse. Carter gets elected. Reagan returns. He wins 49 states. By the time he runs a third time in 84 against Mondale. Now, for 40 years, people called themselves Reagan Republican because he wasn't just a Democrat that became a Republican that was a star in some other way. Sound familiar? Right?
Yeah.
They weren't just worried about Reagan and maybe his vice president winning twice. And the Bushes won between the two of them 3 elections. Okay. There's problems with the Bushes, but there's some other things that they did that were all right. They were worried about these 40 years of people calling themselves Reagan Republican. So
Yeah.
let's fast forward to now. One of the reasons you've seen all this done to Donald Trump is not just because Trump's got generational talent in his family. It's because there's some freaking kid busting a table at the Mandalay Bay right near you that for the next 40 years, and he may be governor of Nevada someday, is calling himself a Trump Republican. That's their freaking heads exploding. It's not Matt Gaetz. It's not MTG or Byron Donalds or, Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. They're worried about the kids. They're worried about generation after generation after generation. Waves of Trumps that are coming.
Yes.
Busting tables in Lincoln, Nebraska. Studying political science at NYU, University of Maine, University of New Mexico.
Yeah.
Freaking waves of these people. That's what they are scared to death of. So you got to arrest them. You got to shoot them. Because they're scared to death. They saw what happened with Reagan, Goldwater, and Buckley, and Reagan. Reagan was the culmination. Yeah. Reagan was the culmination. Barack Obama wrote in his book that, of all people, Sarah Palin, I bet you didn't think I was going to go here, that Sarah Palin midwife, along with Andrew Breitbart, the first embers of what eventually became the MAGA movement. And it went through the Tea Party. It went through, talk radio, Rush was still alive, and Palin, and Lipstick on a Pig, and the whole deal, right? Breitbart.com, Bannon. These are the first, right? Eric Cantor being taken out. Remember that? Oh my, we woke up one morning.
Yeah.
Okay. So these were the first embers. Because big things, they start with just a little bit of atoms moving around. Atoms started moving around, whether it's Concord Bridge or whether it's, what happened here in this last election. This is what they are scared to death of. Mark my words. They're because they need to make it uncomfortable to put on that red hat or to put the Trump sign in your yard.
Yeah.
But they blew it. They freaking blew it.
Yeah.
At this point, it's spitballs on a battleship, and they've lost
Yeah.
their mind. They've lost their mind because other than Grover Cleveland, no one has done this. No one has done this. And if you're looking for history, just in general, you got all these Republicans that were shot. Trump now joins them. How about this? First, only the second person to win in non-consecutive races. But here's the thing: when he won in 16, he was he's the only person that we've ever had still that did not serve in some other office, either as a governor, a senator, or congressman, and B, wasn't a general like Washington, Jackson, Zachary Taylor,
Yeah.
right? Grant, Eisenhower. So he's already sort of on this island alone.
Yeah.
But now he's become a counterculture icon for all time. The mugshot for all time.
Yes.
The fight picture in Butler, Pennsylvania for all time.
Yes.
And they can't stand it. They can't stand it.
Yeah. Because they want control. They want control of our brains. They want control of our beliefs. Yes. AJ Rice, thank you for being on Awakened Nation, my friend. How do we get a hold of you, by the way? Where do we go?
Well, go to anywhere, get, PubliusPR.com. If you are a conservative and you're looking to get out there, my day job is not writing political humor books like this behind me, but, I help all different types of conservatives get out there in the media. Not just authors, but if you've got an organization or group, some campaigns we've worked on, we helped Vivek in the last cycle, or we've helped RFK Jr. We did RFK Jr. Super PAC. We do a lot of different things. We don't have much competition. Most of the people have either joined us, or they've gotten a toe tag and put in the Schuylkill River there, Fred. So, or the Susquehanna for you. But the reality is that the reality is that we like to have fun. But if you want to get a copy of the White Privilege album, get a copy of The Woking Dead. You got a college graduate that's got blue hair and is thinking of joining the Tesla burners. Maybe get him a couple copies of this book. Maybe we can win him over with comedy versus drama.
I love it. People pick up his books. They're tremendous. They're the greatest books ever written. I love them. I laugh my ass off, by the way. I just love your writing style. I'm not going to let you go yet. I got a couple of questions for you. So our audience gets to know you better. And my first question real quick is, who's your favorite comedian right now?
Ooh, right now? I think I got to go with the pride of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, right? I mean, I've got to go with Shane Gillis. I mean, I've got to go.
He is.
I've got to go with him. Probably right now, not just the stand-up specials, but the appearances he makes.
Yeah.
Throughout whether it's ESPN, Saturday Night Live, he's got if you haven't seen his TV show on Netflix, which is called Tired, where it's basically him and a couple other goofballs running something called Valley Forge Tire Company.
Yeah.
Valley Forge.
I love that show. I like that show.
So look, I'm a homer, right? So I got to go with Gillis. But I mean, that whole crew's pretty funny. Schultz is funny. Theo Vaughn's funny.
Yeah, they are.
There are some greats that are out there that have not been afraid, at least lately, to punch back, like Dave Chappelle and Ricky Gervais. They're always solid. If you try to tell those guys what they can't make fun of, they're going to make fun of that exact thing.
Yeah.
Which is actually how I go about doing my books. And I am wrapping up book 3 as we speak, which will be out next year, a little tease. So, if you tell me that I can't talk about something, that's exactly what I'm going to freaking do. Right? A long tradition that goes back to Lenny Bruce and Carlin and Pryor and Joan Rivers and Rickles and Dice and Kinnison and Rodney and many others, Eddie Murphy. If you tell us not to talk about something, that's where we're going.
You got it. My other question is, you worked with Laura Ingraham and Glenn Beck. What was that like, man? I mean, you helped produce their shows and help launch some channels. I mean, you're a heavy hitter, brother.
Well, Laura is like my sister. I didn't work on the Glenn Beck program, and with Glenn, like I sat next to Ingram for 5 years, and then I sat next to Monica Crowley for 2. So those 2 women in particular kind of pulled me from the river like Moses. They're like my media mothers. They both gave me a blurb for The Walking Dead, my first book. And now Monica is about to be confirmed as Assistant Secretary of State. Laura has been put on the Kennedy Center board. Her and Maria Bartiromo are going to go in there and kick some people in the rear end into the Potomac River. So the Ingram is a blue collar chick. She came from nothing.
Yeah.
She got herself into Dartmouth and then UVA Law School. She clerked for Clarence Thomas. So, that was her boot camp. That was her boot camp. And then as I joke around with her now, and I was just on her show as a guest last Friday night with Lisa Booth, she was my boot camp. I mean, she's a tough cookie.
Yeah.
And I was the longest serving producer. And she's a mentor even now.
God bless, man. Thank you for your work. My last question, and we'll make it quick because I know you're tight on time. Everything you've done, man, all the writing that you've done, what's your favorite memory?
Oh, my favorite memory. I mean, from writing or just from being in this media world for 20 years?
In this media world, even what made you conservative? I mean, what is your best memory?
We don't have enough time for that. I don't know when this is going to air.
In a month, probably.
Okay. Well, I'm going to timestamp it a little bit. So it's Good Friday today when we're recording this. And the reason I'm bringing up this is that I've had a lot of different experiences, over the years, people I got to meet or hang out with. And I was at a Good Friday dinner 10 years ago, maybe 12 at this point. I think Barack Obama was the president. And it was in Beverly Hills. It was at the home of a famous Hollywood agent that actually also does some acting, and he actually was a fill-in host for Limbaugh for a short period of time, named Doug Urbanski. And his most famous client is an actor the audience might have heard of named Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Sirius Black, right? Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
Right? Commissioner Gordon, Sirius Black from Harry Potter. So I got to spend a whole afternoon with him, and he was playing a piano. I'm sitting next to him. I'm talking with him, and we're talking about film and art, music, and life. And, he was, he was talking about, our politics. This is before wokeism really took off. I think Barack Obama might have been, president maybe for a couple of years at this point.
Right.
But I asked him what his dream role would be. And he told me Winston Churchill.
Wow.
And, as everyone knows, he has won an Academy Award since then by playing Churchill. Right?
Yeah. That was a good movie.
The Darkest Hour, right, is the movie.
Yeah.
And he tells me about Churchill, and why and how Churchill's flawed himself, but sometimes history needs flawed people to act as, sort of the white blood cells to save Western civilization. So whether it's Benjamin Netanyahu or George Washington or Donald Trump or Abraham Lincoln, Ronald Reagan, I remember when Ronald Reagan was disqualified because he had been married twice, for example.
Yeah.
Right? So Trump's been married 3 times. You don't get, to bring it all back to Batman there with Commissioner Gordon, you don't always get the hero you want. Sometimes you get the hero you deserve. And, Gary Oldman, that moment with Gary Oldman for me rings in my head constantly. And I've communicated with him since, and he's, I've gotten messages from Doug and him, and, they did a little conservative tour when for the Darkest Hour. I think they went to Hillsdale College and did a few things. You know, he's not as overt as like a Mel Gibson or like a James Woods
Yeah,
about his, you know, and he's British, so you know he's only going to weigh in on American garbage so much. But that was an interesting moment, and I've got to look. If I ever write the real book, I got dozens of these, but that was one of them. I appreciate the question because I don't get a chance to talk about at least that story. I think I maybe only told it once or twice.
I freaking love that you had that experience simply because I love Gary Oldman's work. And there's a quote from Winston Churchill that I love, and that is, fascists of the future will not know they're fascists. And has that played out in recent years. But Gary Oldman is extraordinary. And that is the way to end the show, which is we don't get the hero we want, we get the hero we deserve. Thank you, AJ. Thanks for being on Awakened Nation, my friend.
Thank you, sir. You keep fighting. You're a patriot. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friends. Hey, everybody, don't forget to tune in next week for another extraordinary guest here on Awakened Nation. Bye-bye for now. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share this episode out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success is because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.